Look at this. So we're talking about jumper energy or jumpers, because there's for many of us, we have a lot of jumpers. And I'm not just talking about the cute little romper outfits. We used to call them jumpers back in the day, and now they're called rompers, all of the ers. So I put some questions in the chat too, to kind of queue up some things for us to discuss. If you're here, go ahead and tell me hi and let me know you're here. This is our discussion, our continued discussion about the elements of living. And another way that we've talked about it is the archetypes of living and dying. And this all comes from, hi Shayla, this all comes from my experiences giving the living and dying body process to people, the different elements that show up to make those sessions a lot more nurturing and a lot more effective, a lot more gentle for me as the giver of the session and the person who's receiving it both. So we come away with like a, and that's really nice. And then we also get to create our living and how we'd like to live more actively. So we've been talking about a bunch of different ones. For those of you that are just joining in to our series, in the Soaring Beyond Definition group, you can find our previous videos under the announcements tab. You can also find some of the videos, not all of them, on the YouTube channel, because I'd like us to actually contribute to the community and the discussion in the community, and provide most of the content in this private group so we can really have these intimate discussions. This isn't something for everybody. Not everybody is up for this type of discussion and talk. Not everyone really wants to truly live. Not everyone really wants to be aware of where they're aware of living and dying and death and life and destruction and creation. And that's okay. But for those that are, this is the series for them. This is the kind of conversations that we can be having. I hope you like, I love this one. I've used this image a couple times because we're talking about jumping and leaping, right? And so I love this fish. And sometimes we need to be different and get away from everybody else and who isn't willing to have the awareness about this, isn't willing to have those conversations to have living our way, and to have something different and fun and amazing and exuberant. And yeah. And it's interesting. Some of the delay was tech stuff today, but also it was just this like super heavy today. So any of you that were realizing and like aware of a lot of heaviness this morning and throughout today, maybe it started for you even yesterday. There was a little bit of that in my world yesterday as well. Go ahead and acknowledge that. Say, hey, yeah, I'm aware of that. Because that's the first step for you to actually start having it move out of your system and out of your body. And with the jumper energy, this is one of those great tools for helping you move through the heaviness. Just to review, the different elements of living fall in different categories. There's influencers, distractors, door openers, discoverers, outlaws, the powers, and then different landscapes and worlds. And then we have the celebrants. And the jumpers actually fall under celebrants. So it actually helps you celebrate your life, even if no one else wants to drink the champagne and toast your life with you, that you can actually be more willing to celebrate your life and enjoy it and not wait on anybody else to do that. And there's a couple other purposes that you can use the jumper energy with. Instead, I'm going to invite you to use that today and going to give you some examples of how they can show up, but also, what do you know about this? What do you know about the elements of living of the jumper that could contribute to this discussion? So go ahead and pop that in the comments below at any time. So the questions I put in the chat right now is, what would it take for you to leap into the next chapter of your life? So celebration is also a moment of gratitude. And many people that message me, they message me because they'd like something else to show up in their life, but they also kind of get themselves stuck and they don't want to make the leap, go ahead and jump, because they don't want to seem ungrateful for what they already have, for the family they have, the home they have, the place that they live in, the job that they have, so they won't make the leap to the next chapter in their lives because they don't want to seem ungrateful. Is that relevant to any of you? If so, go ahead and pop in the chat if that's ever been the case for you, and what area of your life has that been showing up in? For me, it took a long time for me to leave a toxic job. It took a while for me to leave relationships where I knew it wasn't going to go anywhere and be sustainable for me. And then when I finally did, the sense of relief, and you want to celebrate, but you almost like don't want to let yourself celebrate. You're like, so you go inside like a little celebration instead of like, yes, like you can do it. It's okay. We won't tell anybody in our group. It's going to be a private thing. Go ahead and celebrate what and who you're leaving. That's going to actually move you toward the life you'd really like to have. So there's a couple different things with that. There's also just the simple idea of getting out of bed. So for the first time in over a year, it was really, really hard for me to get out of bed. And it reminded me of the call I did maybe 2 years ago called Leaping Out of Bed in the Morning. And I created that call because I was getting so many messages of people that were having a hard time getting out of bed. It's just as simple as that. And so I did a whole call of all these different tools that I use to get myself out of bed. And I use them since morning. And one of them is an access consciousness tool called Who Does This Belong To? Is this even mine? And I knew it wasn't. I knew it was everywhere that all of y'all who are watching this now and in the future are not willing to be jumpers. And that heaviness of what you're using to weigh you down and anchor you down into this reality, into other people's muck. And that was showing up. And I was like, got it. So we're going to move through this and then we're going to let it go today together. Yay! But man, did it show up to try to stop me from talking about this with you today. And I didn't let it. It was tempting, but I didn't let it. And so acknowledging that it wasn't mine and that it was so much other stuff coming up is a big one. And sometimes just that question makes it start to move and shift. And then I also love the follow-up tool of access consciousness, which is just saying, return it to sender with consciousness attached, return it to sender with consciousness attached, return it to sender with consciousness attached. And as many times as you need to do it, keep doing it. Sometimes I've done it up to 20 times, but it gets me out of bed and it gets me through the heaviness and everything that's not letting me move forward. Okay. So I'm gonna talk about a couple different systems of tools, not just access consciousness, not just the living and dying body process with this one, because the jumper jumps around. It's one of those things where it's all about jumping around to different systems of tools. What's going to work now? And what's going to work now? And what's going to work now? And boom, boom, jump, jump, jump. And so it's about being really pragmatic as to what's going to work for you. And no one thing is the thing, so be willing to use everything and jump around. I really wanted to find an image of like leaping frogs because I love frogs. One of the meanings of my name is frog. And I have a special place in my heart for frogs, but I didn't find a frog image that I really, really like. So if you all find a copyright-free jumping frog image, could you please post it in our group? It would make me very, very happy. And it would contribute to this jumper energy, I think, for the group, for all of us. So that would be really fun. As a celebrant, the category that this archetype of living and dying that falls under, yes, it's to celebrate your life. And it's also to celebrate choices. And I love having this energy of jumping because it's about any chapter in life. It's also when other people choose to transition. So in whatever way they choose it. And this is when it gets a little bit tricky for some of us because we sometimes judge how people choose to transition. A perfect example of that is when someone chooses to kill themselves. We don't want to celebrate that, right? We refuse, we really dynamically resist celebrating that. And so I have a lot of entities visit me that are of those who have committed suicide. And I have a lot of people come to me who have had people who've committed suicide in their lives. I've had people who've committed suicide in my life. I've almost committed suicide multiple times when I was dealing with anxiety and depression for many, many years. So I am definitely aware of that energy, that vibration, and I don't ignore it. I don't avoid it, which is something I think makes me a little bit different. But the other aspect of it is with this jumper energy, I am willing to talk people off of the ledge more easily because, one, I'm willing to be aware of when someone's about to jump and it commits suicide. And if I get that they actually are doing this because they feel like they have no other options, it's different than if it's just like they've tried everything and they are committing suicide. So there's a lot of nuance to this. It's not a simple conversation. And I love that this is actually the element of living that y'all voted for September, because September is Suicide Awareness Month. And Suicide Awareness Month was when I often do sample sessions of the Living and Dying Body process. I'm going to start that again this month, and I'm going to be offering it all month long, sample sessions, 20-minute sessions of the Living and Dying Body process. Thanks. Hi, Sebastian. I'm so glad you're here. And part of it is that if you were willing to have a jumper energy, then you can be aware of when someone in your life is suicidal faster than others. One of the things that loved ones come to me to talk about is they were like, I had no idea, or maybe I had an inkling, but I kind of ignored it. I kind of was like, no, that can't be possible. And then they use that to judge themselves and to further deepen and contract in their grief over the person who's committed suicide, instead of maybe communicating with their person as a being, even though they don't have a body anymore, or looking at what it's creating for that person as a being after they've transitioned, like actually having conversations with them about what life they would like next, or being able to have your eyes more open to those that are left. Because as studies show, many people who are left behind after suicides, they're more likely to commit suicide if they've had somebody in their life that's committed suicide. So we want to be vigilant. We don't want to project it upon them, but we want to make sure that we're willing to recognize those signs and invite them to a different possibility if they would truly like to live. And I emphasize that if they would truly like to live part. The first person I helped off the ledge was when I was 16, that I can consciously recall. Maybe there were some other people by just smiling at them or saying hi or giving them a call, and they never told me that they were about to commit suicide, but that one gesture changed things for them. But the first person that I knew consciously that I helped them not kill themselves was when I was 16, and I was working on a crisis line in Fox Valley, Illinois. And I would be getting calls from different people for different mental health issues, for, I'd have different shifts, and it was all volunteer work. Yes, check out the comments in the chat, y'all. These are great comments. Suicide is a pandemic, a topic very close to my heart. Thank you for touching on this. A conversation can change or save a life. Absolutely. I agree with that. And I'd like for any of the people here, and there are a lot of therapists in our group. So say hi if you're a therapist, if you're a life coach, if you're a relationship coach, because you're probably talking to those people, those very people that I'm referring to, that maybe they're not fully into suicide ideation. Maybe they haven't come up with ideas yet, but there's something there. There's a thread of this already maybe in their world that you could start to recognize. And so here I was 16, and this gentleman who would call every week to the crisis line was suicidal. And I don't exactly remember what I told him, but I reminded the person of what they could be grateful for. And this is the celebrant part of the jumper. So here you are, they're about to jump. They're about to jump into this other chapter, this other space, this other dimension by committing suicide potentially. And then you're going to use gratitude, and you're going to use consciousness, and then being aware of what their unique gifts and capacities are. You're going to use what they've created so far that's worked to maybe guide them into not back to where they were, because you don't want to guide someone back. When you say back off the ledge, that's not really quite accurate. You want to guide them off of the ledge, but into a different possibility. So not back off the ledge, off of the ledge, and then into a different possibility. I be this energy. This is yet another example of one of the energies that I be with my body when I'm working with my rape survivors. Many of you know that I work with the Rape Crisis Center, and that I'm there as an advocate and be a space for them to make sure that they're hydrated and informed, and that they're warm and as comfortable as possible during a very challenging moment in their lives when they're getting examined by the nurse or being interviewed by the police and things like that. And when you're willing to be this jumper energy, it isn't as slow for them to start taking active steps to move into the next chapter, to go through the legal system, which can be very slow, very daunting, very overwhelming, with a lot more ease. Okay. I have a very close family member and friend who is dealing with something very similar to this right now. And I be this energy of, okay, what's the next thing? What's the plan moving forward? And then this energy of gratitude, which I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have the energy of gratitude when you're also activating the jumper energy. So let me know what comes up with you for that, y'all. If you know of anyone that's suicidal in your life, this is one of the things that is helpful. If you know of someone that's just wanting to make a jump. So a lot of you have been messaging me because you're moving, right? You're packing up your homes. I helped one of my good friends this past weekend move to a new apartment. I'm still a little achy and sore from it. I'm gonna have some Epsom salt bath with that one. I was just resting yesterday. But the jumping into new chapters in that way too, it's a great one for some of you who would like to sell your homes or find the new home faster. This is a great energy to call upon and activate. It's really all of these elements of living play a different role and can be helpful in different ways depending on what type of life transition is going on. It's all about having ease with transition and change. Living is a continuous choice of what you're adding in more and more. Maybe adding in a new home, adding in new furniture, you're doing decorating, a new car, okay? And then dying is the aspects of what you're letting go of. So are you letting go of the person that's committed suicide? And not even letting go of their memory, it's letting go of the guilt, letting go of the judgment, letting go of the stuff that's the heaviness, the contraction, the solidification, where you put the loss of them in your heart, and then you start creating stuff in your heart and in the rest of your body with what you're letting stay stuck. So that's why one of the hand movements and positions of the body process involve the heart, because many of us, we put it right here and it's not necessarily our best choice. Okay. Also, every moment that we've considered committing suicide, or we've considered we've held our breath, kind of like not even holding our breath, but like having our heart stop. When you've been in surgery and they had to like zap you back to life, or when you've been in a car accident, or where you're about to be in a car accident, but they didn't hit you, but you knew that it was like a millisecond or a millimeter away from hitting you. This is the energy of this. And in that moment, some of us might have jumped out of our bodies. Some of us might have locked in things into our heart that we need to then remove and things like that. So this jumper energy can show up in a lot of different ways. For those of you that have jumped out of your bodies, maybe you're out of your body right now during this conversation. And I perceive that that's the case for some of you because it's so intense, this energy for some of us. Please stay with your body during this conversation so you can receive the benefits of it more. Okay. With your body, give it a squeeze, give it the hug that I can't give you yet. I hope to give it to you soon though. All right. Yes. Okay. Ooh, just waiting for all y'all to be with your body again. All right. Thank you. Okay. Okay, cool. So, so for those of you that know or around people when they're leaving their bodies, like I see that with the kiddos that I work with the parents that I work with, I had a student where they were acting out all the time because that was the only time that their mom was present in her body, was when she was in crisis management mode with his behavior. Okay. So there is, you know, I've seen it where it's like the kids that go into other dimensions and they seem to be in their own world somewhere else. They're not really with their body and present. That is another example of how the jumper can show up, because that's what happens when you're at the effect of the living and dying, of this element of living and dying, this archetype of living and dying. It has multiple sides. One side could be creating more and the other side could be creating less. So it's creating less when you're not present with your body. It's definitely creating something, but it's just not necessarily that exuberant living that you'd like. It's a lot harder for you to have exuberant living if you're jumped out of your body. But then that same energy of the jumper, when you're willing to be aware of it, can bring you back with your body so you can receive more money and have more fun and get to have these transitions and leap into the next chapter of your life more easily. Another way that it can show up is if you are having a hard time taking those first steps with a project, with something that you'd like to change in your life, asking the jumper energy to be like, all right, what if I already am aware of what's on the other side of this first step? Because some of us are so concerned that we're so scared to take the first step because we're not sure what it will create. We want to know everything that'll happen before we choose it, instead of realizing, well, choice will create our awareness, will give us more awareness. So we don't even want to choose until we have the awareness ahead of time. That doesn't work. And so one of the things that I asked for with the jumper energy is I was like, okay, let me be this jumper energy. And what if I already knew what was on the other side? Let me leap to the other side of this first step that I'm debating about. Oh, well, that'll create so much. Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. And now I can take the step more easily. All right. Because you're already going to start perceiving the energy and of what is going to be created by that action. All right. And for some of us that aren't sure, when we're playing around with questions like, what will it create if we do this? What will it create if it doesn't? And we're so in our own way because we already have maybe some points of views about it, some projections and expectations. Well, having the jumper energy about it will kind of clear through the muck, because it's going to jump all over all the fuzziness, all of the projections and points of views you have about it, all the conclusion you have about it. So you can get to that clarity piece, and then but you're still going to be with your body while your awareness is jumping over all the muck, right? Stay with your body, and then you're going to come back and actually take action. Hopefully that's the idea. Please take action. And then this is also really helpful for continued momentum. So yes, you've maybe already been taking some steps, and then you might plateau and you're like not really doing anything about something, or you're kind of feeling like things are slowing down, and it's about your part in it, because you can't really control anybody else, but your part is like, it's like you're moving through quicksand again. You're like, we wanted to keep it smooth and flowing. This is another really great one about it, because it's a lot of mini jumps that keep the momentum going. Okay. Last thing I want to reiterate is we started by talking about just the getting out of bed in the morning, how challenging that can be for some of us. And what if we could leap out of bed in the morning? And if you all are interested in the replay of that call that I did, let me know. I don't remember how much I charged for it, but I know it wasn't a lot. It was just trying to make it accessible to people, so I can send you that information. But one of the things that it also helps us do is work beyond gravity. It's kind of like a sci-fi movie. Like I get now that when I was thrown off of a horse in November, and it wasn't just me, it was my mom and 2 other friends, I wasn't as injured because I was being the energy of the jumper. I actually used the catapulsion. Is that a word? The catapulting of the horse and it bucking me off of its back as a platform for me to keep jumping. And then I landed and I rolled right away instead of landing hard on the ground. And then I got up and kept moving and started helping everybody else and running energetic body processes on them, including the living and dying body process and a bunch of other ones that are in my arsenal, because remember, it's about jumping, which is the one that's going to work for each person. But one of those things that I get when I watch these amazing athletes in the Olympics, when I watch these, you know, these advanced kids that are doing this stuff with their bodies, that you like, how are they even able to do that? I get that there is a jumper energy with their body and in their world that they're willing to be. And for each of us, it's a little bit different. Like, you know, with the Paralympics too, you see them doing these amazing things and soaring beyond definition, no matter what's been going on with, you know, their sensory system, if they're blind, or with their limbs, if they have a, you know, if they're an amputee. There's just, it's really cool. It's like, yeah, that happened. And now what? Or this is what's showing up in my life. And let me jump. What's the next thing I can do that will light me up? And I just love that there are so many different ways that the jumper energy can show up. And I get that this whole like beyond gravity and not letting the gravitas of the heaviness of this world weigh you down is big, big, big. Last example I'm going to mention, and if there is any other examples you'd like of a particular area of your life or certain situation, let me know in the comments as to, okay, how could I use the jumper energy for blah, 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 and I will respond to that. But maybe some of you remember a couple of years ago, I was engaged to be married, second time being engaged. And we had the venue set up, we had the equipment set up, we had people that were going to be flying in, they had the hotels, they had the flights booked, and my then fiance called off the wedding, and it was really upsetting. And I took, you know, a couple weeks to not really respond to anyone. I think it was like 3 weeks, and then I did a video on it just to let people know, okay, this is what's going on. And one of the things that helped is the jumper energy with that as well. Is, okay, yes, I was about to start this certain chapter of my life that I thought was going to look this way, and I was ready to go, right? Boop, I was going to go there. And this is also really helpful when the world and the ground underneath you seems to shift, and the leap that you were about to take isn't happening anymore. And then you're like, you're almost still in midair, like this fish. There it is. There's a fish. It's in midair, and you're like, wait, you just moved the bowl. So now I'm flopping around on the ground, and I was ready to jump into another bowl. So then what do? Look for another bowl. Look for where you're actually meant to be instead. And that's, and being grateful for my ex-fiance's choice helped immensely. That gratitude with the jumper, again, is huge, huge, huge. So it took a lot of bravery for him to call off the engagement. It took a lot of bravery for him to, quote unquote, inconvenience our family members and friends that were going to come over. But it's better. I'm so grateful that he did it then instead of waiting until after we got married. And he's a good guy. He's out there in the world doing his thing. And man, have I met amazing people and created a ton since then. But part of what let me keep moving forward was the gratitude and me asking for, okay, so what is the question I put in the chat? I'm going to read it again. What would it take for me to leap into the next chapter of my life? Because I was ready for another chapter. It's just wasn't going to be the chapter that I had originally thought it was going to be. And that's the case for a lot of us. We kind of get blindsided. We are surprised by things. Oh, that job promotion doesn't come through. Now what? Okay, that proposal isn't happening, or the wedding isn't happening. Okay, now what? Oh, I thought I was moving to this place, and now I'm not. I've had that happen multiple times in the last couple of years, where thought I was going to be moving to San Diego, or I thought I was going to be moving to Thunderbolt, or I thought I was going to be moving. It's like, and the world changed, and I'm like, all right, now what? So now what? Like, look at this for yourself and play around with the jumper energy, and let me know what it creates for you during the week. And I'll see you next week, same time. Please go ahead and continue to vote in the poll. I'm going to make a new poll because I think this one's about to expire, just because that's just how Facebook likes doing polls. It expires. And be willing to look at where you're a jumper in your life, where you're jumping from one thing to the next and not judging yourself for it. And where are there the people in your life that they might be jumping, that they might be suicidal, and for you to be willing to recognize those signs. And I'm going to put some more resources on that in our group for y'all, because that's a really important topic for me as well. I'd like to prevent the suicides that people who really would like to live as much as possible. So thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you next week. Bye for now, everyone.